I'm at the age where a lot of high school and college friends are at the point in their careers where they're looking for a major pivot, and a few have seriously considered getting into real estate. They got the people skills, the drive, the passion for helping others, but as you can imagine, the hardest part is often finding the best way to get started. And that's where RealtorsRealEstateSchool.com can be a game changer. Realtors Real Estate School has the 50 years of know-how, the networking and resources to help you get started. Visit now for a free consultation. Again, that's RealtorsRealEstateSchool.com. You remember that amazing little cafe you discovered last summer, or that perfect hiking spot you heard about? Well, with the Overlook mobile app, you can create personal lists of places you've been, want to go, and always see everything on a map. Share your favorite hidden gems with friends and family. Or, keep your secret spots private for you. The best part, no ads cluttering your list and no one selling your interests or travel data. All you gotta do is download the free app at overlookmaps.com and check out overlookmaps.com/Chicago to see some of our personal favorite CityCast lists on a map and in your pocket. Overlookmaps.com. Collect and share the places that matter to you. Make sure you stay tuned after the interview for a quick conversation sponsored by the Chicago Association of Realtors about Realtors Real Estate School. Today on CityCast Chicago, with the threat of National Guard deployment looming over the city, let's not forget that immigration raids are still happening across Chicagoland. But as they've intensified, so has Migra Watch, aka ICE Watch. We're talking with an organizer about what every Chicagoan should know. It's Thursday, August 28th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Diego Morales is the chair of the 25th Ward Independent Political Organization and a lead organizer with the Pilsen Rapid Response Network. Diego, thanks for joining us here at CityCast Chicago.
Thanks for inviting me, Kobe. Happy to be on. My buddy Tati showed me the pod, so I got to shout her out since I'm on here. So thanks. Thanks for putting me on.
Hey, we appreciate you. We appreciate Tati. Thank you for coming on to talk about the Pilsen Rapid Response Network. Can you tell me why this community network formed? What's the purpose?
We're like a neighborhood network, but we're also connected to what is now a statewide network. And it's actually a continuation of something that we've been doing since Trump's first term, where we had like a rapid response group come together to find ways that we can defend our community, to defend our immigrants in our neighborhood from these abductions that ICE has been doing. So, I mean, the way that the work that we engage in, connected with this larger network, is mostly about educating people as much on this issue to help protect them, and then responding to things when they happen, documenting in a variety of ways that can help people out in their cases, and then, of course, supporting families and supporting anybody who's directly affected by the issue.
We've obviously covered it on the podcast. We know our colleagues across Chicago are paying very close attention, but this is a network that's been going on since the first Trump administration. Can you kind of paint a picture, as someone who's been on the ground, how this second administration has been different?
Oh, yeah, it is definitely much more intense. It's much more aggressive. Things like the fact that these people are masked. These agents are masked and won't identify themselves, that they're casting a wider net and being very public about how many arrests they're trying to make, day to day. It's really awful. They have this milestone, this goal of deporting, I think, 1 million immigrants, like by the end of the year, by a certain part of Trump's term. And it is definitely much, much worse and much more intense than it was the first term. But I will say the support that we have, I think, is actually even stronger than it was during Trump's first term as well. I was actually just talking with some other organizers about comparing the current moment with like the uprising in 2020 in the wake of like George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and how like you had these, Black radicals, Black community organizers that have been doing that since 2014-ish, when Black Lives Matter kind of started. But that year it was like, oh wow, like there's like more white people at the protests than before. Like this is kind of a different development. We see a lot more support. And I think this administration, you're kind of seeing a similar thing when it comes to this immigration issue, where you have like people from all walks of life, from all parts of the city and even the state, different kinds of immigration statuses or not, like that want to help and want to, even put their body on the line and take whatever risk is necessary to help protect our neighbors. So I think the Trump administration is definitely badder and uglier and more aggressive, but I think we're actually also stronger and smarter and more prepared.
Since day one of this second Trump administration, fear has been hiding in communities. We've seen detainments happen over the last 6 months, but it feels like the last couple months of the summer as communities have turned their attention to school coming back and protecting summer festivals and workplace raids. Some of the coverage has waned. How has it been on the ground? Are we still seeing those massive operations like we saw in the South Loop back in June?
Yeah, so that is definitely still happening. People being deported and picked up and abducted every single day. There are definitely ebbs and flows. And I think one thing that's interesting that I noticed earlier this year is that, ironically, even though ICE seems like this massive, awful, overwhelming force, and in many ways that it is that I think the Trump administration actually does not have enough resources to do what it is trying to do. There's only so many detention beds that they have. There's only so many facilities that they're able to operate out of. And we sometimes see like the same agents in the same cars going out. And you're seeing now like this public campaign to try to recruit ICE agents. I don't know if you've seen these, but I've seen them on social media out in the world.
I have the $50,000 in bonus pay, the student loan assistance.
Yeah. And I think it also shows that they're struggling maybe to fill those numbers. I think these ICE agents too, it's the reason why they mask themselves. It's the reason why they come up with bogus stories about the people that they're abducting. And it's, of course, talking about the narrative, we know that it's not about, I saw a really great articulation of this somewhere, but like, it's not about people being lazy because they're picking up people at work. And it's not about people, not going through the system the right way because they're picking them at the courthouse at their regular check-ins. And we know that it's not about people being dangerous because it is students, it's young people, it's children, it's like working families that are being abducted. So we know that all this is completely bogus and that there are certain like choke points that they're starting to come up with or starting to encounter as they're trying to do this operation. So like to your point of like the ebbs and the flows, now we're kind of, I would say, in a bit of a scary moment because they did pass this, quote unquote, big, beautiful bill or big, awful bill or whatever, which is essentially a mass infusion of cash from working class people, particularly from their healthcare, to ICE persecution, these abductions, these detentions. And it's mostly going to basically prison space. They're opening 2 new facilities in Indiana, which I think have a combined amount of like 2,000 beds. Another one in northern Michigan. Like they're building a logistical operation to actually do what it is they're trying to do. And that is very scary. On the ground, we do know that what we're doing is also having a bit of an effect in their operations too. I think, I don't know if you know who Tom Homan is.
Immigration czar is the shorthand has been given to him.
That's right. The border czar. And they wanted to make an example out of Chicago. And he made that very clear on TV. But then after a few weeks or a month or so of our operation, he was on CNN basically crying practically about, oh, Chicago's well educated, organized. They have all these pamphlets telling people their rights, blah, blah, blah. And you can tell that in the frustration of even, agents in cases that we encounter is we're telling people not to open their doors. They don't have to answer questions. They have rights. Even if you're an undocumented citizen, you have a right. You have rights under the U.S. Constitution. And there are boundaries to which these agencies can operate. And of course, they're doing everything they can to bend and break those things. But the more that we're organized and educating people, the more they're able to basically maintain those and protect themselves. So, we're at a standstill where we're trying to figure out, okay, what is really coming next? Because you don't see it as covered as much in the media, but, this is still happening, right? And this is another point that I wanted to make, and about like how we cover this issue is really so important, because I think the Trump administration realizes that it doesn't have the resources to actually deport that many people. So it relies on instilling fear so that people self-deport. I mean, we get a lot of families, unfortunately, that reach out and talk about like, how can I, get out of here and take my family? And if I'm going to be kicked out, how do I do it at least with a sense of dignity and on my own terms, which is awful and a harsh reality that so many people face. But it's also a product of this narrative that's being put out there of like that we're helpless, that they're just also powerful and overwhelming. And that's why it's important that, when we are organizing and coming together, these rapid response groups, that we talk about that we let people know that there are people that are organizing and fighting back, and we're having, it's not all for naught. There's some success. We've been able to get people out of detention. We've been able to help protect families.
Can you kind of walk me through how you and other organizers would respond to someone saying they might have spotted ICE, people who are sort of reaching out, trying to mobilize in their own neighborhood or wherever they are?
We're really lucky in Illinois that we have organizations like ICER and OCAD. ICER is the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. They're like really long-standing, since Reagan, I think they've been in operation, a group that advocates for immigrants. And then OCAD, Organized Communities Against Deportations, which is also like, a very grassroots-oriented deportation defense group of directly affected people mostly. And they run what's called the Family Support Network Hotline, which is kind of like the centralized hotline that really operates it's relatively statewide. It has actually reached beyond Chicago, where people can call that number and either report that they think they see ICE, or that someone they know has been detained. That allows us to respond.
I believe it's 855-435-7693, 855 Help My Family.
That's correct. 855-435-7693. So people can call that, and that's where most of our reports come from. They call that hotline. They say, hey, I see ICE over here. I see ICE over there, blah, blah, blah. So the first thing that what we consider kind of what our first step is verification, because again, like fear is so much part of the narrative. We need to be able to be a trusted source of like, was this actually ICE or not? And especially at the beginning, people are very fearful. They're panicking, and they'll see something and assume that it's ICE. And, especially at the beginning, 9 times out of 10, it would be Chicago police. But we have a sanctuary city ordinance in the city of Chicago, which, really does offer a lot of protection in the sense that local police cannot be assisting and does not take part in any immigration enforcement. So we're able to verify, is that police, or is that ICE, or is that something else? So that's kind of our first job. We show up on site. We train our people to understand how this stuff works, how ICE operates, and use the evidence that we have to be able to say, okay, this was an ICE operation or not. That's kind of step one. And like, for instance, on that tip is like, Kristi Noem, second day that Trump came into office, January 22nd, she issued a policy memo that essentially recruited virtually every single federal enforcement agency to assist ICE. So that's really important because it goes to this like resource question, because it is not just ICE, people with ICE vests. It's also the DEA. It's also the FBI. It's also the ATF. And some people may have familiarity with these agencies, but many don't. Like ATF normally would enforce like gun laws, right? They're like going out there, making sure people aren't, 3D printing guns illegally or buying silencers that they shouldn't, et cetera. But now they're here helping ICE like abduct immigrants, right? And so there was actually an incident here in Pilsen where it was the FBI that was kind of at the front of the operation. They had their FBI vests on, and people were thinking, oh, that's not ICE. It's not an abduction or anything like that. It's just FBI. They're probably doing something else. But no, we were able to verify, there's a Homeland Security investigator in the car with them. That was an immigration operation. And that's something that people are still learning, is that they're basically trying to use the whole federal government to do this stuff. So first is we verify, but then if say we respond and it is ICE and it isn't active detention, then we document. Really, it's this tip of like racial solidarity. A lot of these techniques, these immigration organizers originally learned from, like, say the Black Panthers and the Black radical movement of the 60s for cop watching. But it's so important to document the things that they do and to make sure that people know their rights in the moment, because there are certain boundaries that these agencies shouldn't be crossing. And if we're able to catch them doing that, that can be used as evidence to help support people in their individual cases, because they do eventually have to go see a judge. I mean, there's an asterisk to everything because immigration law is very complex. But generally speaking, they do still have to go in front of a judge, and you can potentially present a case if you can get a lawyer to them. But also we use it in litigation. So ICER and OCAD with other legal aid organizations, they've been able to successfully sue the federal government, to sue ICE, and to basically kind of make them hold them back a little further in the way that they operate from evidence that we're able to collect doing things like Mika Watch and rapid response. Because, for instance, they'll try to impersonate local police. They'll try to tell you that they're a police officer or a local police officer, especially in the past. And this is important with the Sanctuary City Ordinance because there's a very clear distinction, a very clear separation of what a local police officer is allowed to do and what a federal agent is allowed to do. An ICE officer is not allowed to pull you over for a broken taillight. Those are not the sets of laws that they're allowed to enforce, right? And those are some of the ways that they try to use those other federal agencies to get around those. But again, there's ways that we can kind of push back against this. So there's a more complicated process to that too. And then obviously if someone's detained, we try to identify them, hook them up with a lawyer, and then try to support whoever may be left behind. Maybe families that need mental health support, families that need help paying rent. There's a really, really awful case. The last case I think we responded to, these two gentlemen from Guatemala were brothers, actually, that were picked up together on their way to work in Little Village. And they're eventually, abducted and deported. And they left behind their young nephew, who was in his young 20s, maybe 20, 21-year-old young man who these older folks are taking care of, and now he's all alone. But so part of the work that we do is trying to make sure that that person who's left behind has support. We connect them with their neighbors, we negotiate with their landlords, and just be a system that they can kind of lean on and rely on because they're all of a sudden thrust in a very scary situation. So that's a bit of a 360-degree view of how we try to approach this issue, and it really relies on the fact that we're connected with this huge network that's well-established organizations, legal aid organizations, other neighborhood networks. So that's another thing for people who might be listening and are thinking about getting involved, is make sure that you're not doing it alone. Make sure that you're doing it, in community and in collective through this network too, because it just makes you much more effective in being able to help people.
You're going to want to bring your tissues for this fascinating theater pick. Come From Away is at Paramount Theater in Aurora. The show is based on a true story, y'all, of a small town in Newfoundland that took in nearly, get this, 7,000 stranded passengers from over 100 countries after planes were grounded because of the 9/11 attacks. 38 of those planes, international flights, landed in Gander, the town that welcomed the world. Nominated for 7 Tony Awards, including Best Musical and Best Original Score, the Chicago area premiere offers a simple message that kindness can and should reach across all borders. Experience the small town generosity. Come From Away runs August 20th through October 12th in downtown Aurora. Don't wait. Get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com. So the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts got a bunch of comedy acts coming through this month, and I think the team has coined the perfect tongue twister log line for it. Y'all ready? Skokie Seriously Side Split in September. Gonna say that 3 times fast because they've got 3 shows you don't want to miss. On September 6th, they got the legend Caroline Rhea in the building. Well, she a legend to me because I remember her as Aunt Hilda from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. On September 20th, Emmy nominee and the only Olympics commentator I want to hear from, Leslie Jones, is coming to blow the roof off that mug. Then on September 27th, Paula Poundstone is closing out the month, bringing that same razor sharp wit that she does to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Get tickets at Ticketmaster.com for the best deals and most reliable pricing, or stop by the North Shore Center box office in Skokie, open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 5, and Sundays 2 hours before showtime. All right, is it just me or is the weather already starting to turn? And I ain't just talking about them thunderstorms. It's definitely cooler than the last time I told you about Window Nation's most popular deal, which means you shouldn't wait to take advantage. This month, get 50% off all window styles. You heard me correctly, half off. And August ends this week, so seriously, go ahead and do it now. You can replace your old windows with custom-built, high-quality new ones that'll protect your home year-round. Installment only takes a day or less. Plus, Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on all their windows, so you can rest protected. seriously, if this has been on your to-do list the last couple weeks or months, go ahead and knock it out now. Schedule your fast free estimate with Window Nation. Call 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Can you kind of talk to like where are these immigration raids happening? Restaurants, homes, you talk about people on their way to work. Are they these big chaotic raids like we saw in June? Are they more targeted?
Yeah, and I definitely want to preface this by saying like things do change. And a lot of what we're trying to do by doing this Migrant Watch stuff is get a better sense of what their tactics are and how they shift, right? But I will say, like, funnily enough or not, like these people generally, they're working 9 to 5s. You know, you will see a lot of activity in the morning and say the early afternoon. It is not as often for us to see activity at night, for instance. But they do target a variety of places, and the places that they've been targeting has been expanding. So they used to spend a lot more time going directly to people's homes. They'll sometimes, you know, here in Pilsen, there's one instance in which they waited outside of his workplace after he was getting off shift. And there have been lots of traffic stops too, which is like one of these areas that we're trying to battle them legally about the boundaries in which they can actually stop people over in a traffic stop. I think it's good to mention in a more macro sense, obviously Chicago has been a big target of the Trump administration very explicitly, but like similar to Trump's first term, I remember it's really the suburbs, the places outside of Chicago that get really hit the hardest. And there's a few reasons for that. And one of them is frankly that like we're much more organized in Chicago. We have lots of networks here. We have a lot of like people that have experience through organization, et cetera, that are ready and set up. And the terrain is a little easier too. We're all a little like more tight knit. In the suburbs, it's a little harder. And, you know, it's been a big focus for us is building out these suburban networks, which we have a lot more of now than we did, especially during Trump's first term. But, you know, they really target those areas where there's less of us, so to speak, to try to hold them accountable. So any support that we can get from folks in the suburbs and outside the, you know, Chicago city area proper, like, you know, that's where we could really use the most help. But it is, generally speaking, and this is one of the ways that we're trying to keep these agencies in check, generally they try to be targeted, right? That there is what's called like collateral arrests, in which they arrest people that might just be in the wrong place at the wrong time on their way to arrest a specific person. But like they're going to try to target somebody's house. They're going to try to target somebody's workplace. They're going to try to target somebody. Unfortunately, there's been a couple of cases in which they pick somebody outside of school when they drop off their kids. So like I say this, and I don't want to necessarily instill fear with it, other than to say, like, because there are ways we are able to fight back, their tactics do shift and change kind of as ours do too. As we become more effective in, say, addressing them when they try to show up to school, we might see less of that, and they might shift elsewhere. Like, you know, famously, Chicago Teachers Union, you know, huge shout out to them. They negotiated sanctuary protections in their contract, and that has been really effective in having a bunch of protocols in place for schools.
If someone calls and says they want to get involved, you know, how do organizers educate and train community members to be a part of Migrant Watch?
Definitely follow different groups on social media. Definitely follow ICER. Definitely follow OCAD. You can follow groups like ours. The Pilsen group does more public-facing trainings than most other groups. So when we do have trainings, we'll announce them and we allow everybody to come in, because we think this is information that any and everybody could use. You know, I think ideally everybody would be armed with this knowledge of what's best practices if they see an ICE agent or someone around them is being targeted. We actually have a couple trainings potentially in the books in September, connected with some universities. So stay on the lookout for that. But yes, follow us. You can sign up. You can do, if you put in your browser bit.ly/MigrantWatch training, all lowercase, that's usually where we'll have trainings that people can sign up for up. And if we don't have any, you can sign up for our list so that you get informed when the next one is announced. But that's really like from our perspective, that's the first step, is to get educated, to get trained. And then the idea is to connect to you and tap you in with, say, your neighborhood, your group, or whatever way it makes sense for you to contribute. Because even though like the Migrant Watch part is the stuff that tends to be talked about the most, not everybody has the same level of comfortability or risk that they're willing to take, because all of this does involve some kind of risk. But there's so many other things that people can do to contribute. It can be supporting families who are in need. It can be helping to put these trainings themselves together. We have a group that really does a great job putting together beautiful little handouts and like graphics that we can go out and like canvas a neighborhood or a public event with. It can seem daunting at first, but there's really no limit to the ways that people can contribute if you just think about what it is that you can do.
If someone was to come across what they think is an operation happening, what type of things should they be looking out for? And are there any suggestions if there is confirmation besides calling the hotline?
The first thing really to do is to tap into the network, give that hotline a quick call, even just to report it quickly and see if other people can come and support. But if you do see something happening in front of you, number one, the best thing I think that you can do is just start filming. Just start documenting, start narrating what it is that you're seeing, start describing what is happening. If you have some background, if you know a little bit about what people's rights are, that they don't have to answer any questions, they aren't legally required to sign anything, to call a lawyer, to call, the people that are being detained can call the hotline themselves, like there's been instances in which people, you can't see it, but I'm holding this like little card that has that hotline number on it, with that little card. And some people have actually slipped this into people's pockets as they're being arrested, and they're able to call that and find help that way. In those moments, look, adrenaline gets pumping, so like it's a very high, tense, stressful situation. So I'm not going to say that there's always a perfect way to approach these sorts of situations, but there is a network that you can rely on. Our network does not suggest that people, put themselves in between or do what they're going to do. Ways that, for example, that you can identify. I mean, I think the first thing is most people confuse police for ICE. And police have generally a pretty strict regulation as far as what they're supposed to wear when they're on duty in particular, right? They usually wear blue shirts, black Kevlar vest that's like full body with white lettering that'll say police. Now, ICE will rely on them trying to impersonate and try to give you the impression that they're police. They'll say vests that also say police, but maybe it may have slightly different coloring. Maybe it'll be a smaller vest, maybe it'll be a yellow or green vest, and maybe it'll have like different color lettering. These all might seem like very small details, but those could be big tells that that's actually not a local police officer, that's a federal agent. And if you do see a federal agent, there's a very good chance that is an immigration operation, especially right now. The other things to note is like cars. They don't have like a standard issue. There's no like standard fleet that these agencies are using. So that's something to kind of keep in mind if you're observing something and you're like, this seems so off. Obviously, if you see agents wearing masks, that's a huge tell. But I think we're ultimately trying to protect people, and we are doing it above ground. Like what we're doing is legal. That's the kind of irony of all of this, is like we're the ones that are actually following the law, so to speak, and making sure that people are following the law. So for that reason, it's important that we do it in a certain way that gives us the cleanest route to help protect somebody and make a case for them, for instance, right? I guess that's something I want to emphasize about the way that we're doing it. Not to say that there's only one way to do this sort of thing, but this has been a very effective way that we've been able to do it here. So we would encourage people to get tapped into the network.
Has the network received any kind of support or response from city leaders directly?
We are very lucky in Chicago. Whatever people think about Mayor Johnson, I have a lot of pride in the fact that if you remember, or if you've seen, we have a whole department that focuses on immigrant and refugee rights, that puts out Know Your Rights information in dozens and dozens of languages. And they put it on the subways. They put it on the L. They put it on the buses, and you see the whole infrastructure of the whole city actually telling immigrants, hey, this is how you can stay protected. We have a city that is behind you. And, we, from being able to coordinate with the city, we've been able to get a sense of things maybe before they happen. And also help with verification, again, I'm not, just to be completely frank here, I don't think the police are an effective use of trying to address public safety. However, if you have a relationship with police departments and police commanders, you're able to verify, hey, somebody thought they saw something happen at this place at this time. Was that you, or was that somebody else? That's a way that we can kind of verify if that was actually Chicago police or not. being able to have a sanctuary city and have elected officials defend the sanctuary city ordinance and use city departments to help put out know your rights information and coordinate, well, I shouldn't say coordinate, but like join in on this mission of protecting immigrants, I think has been very valuable. And I think I really pity, like, even places out in the suburbs, you know, you have mayors, you got elected officials outside of Chicago that are really inviting ICE in a way that's really off. And low key, Trump is trying to put Brandon in jail. You know, like he's like got a lawsuit against him. He's trying a lot to try to pressure him to back off. And while we're on the grassroots side of things defending, you know, from the community level, there's no replicating that. There's no replacing that. Like, to really fully protect ourselves, to really win this thing and kind of take it home so we don't have to worry about this all the time, we need elected officials, we need administrations to step up and to push back. It's like Chicago is so special in that way because we really do fight back. People are ready to show up and fight. And that's something that's so special about our city that we should be proud of.
Is there anything else you think community members should be aware of regarding ICE threats, immigrant rights?
I mean, get involved. Don't wallow. You know, like you read the news all the time. You get sad. You get angry. And I'll tell you, I get very sad and I get very angry too. But being able to have some time to contribute to this and to show up with our neighbors and to defend them and do things that we see like our material ways to defend our neighbors it's obviously not just the right thing to do. And it's not just effective in trying to defend our neighbors. It's also good for you. It's also good for your mental health. It's good for how you kind of carry on from day to day, because that is, we still have to do that. And, you know, we have such a nice, beautiful network and members that get involved and contribute in all different kinds of ways. And it's nourishing in its own way.
Please check our show notes for more resources. I want to extend a heartfelt appreciation to Diego Morales. Thank you for making time and stopping by.
Thank you, Kobe.
Up next, a conversation sponsored by the Chicago Association of Realtors, hosted by yours truly. Hey, Jacoby here with Erica Villegas, the 2025 president of the Chicago Association of Realtors. Welcome to the podcast, Erica.
Thank you, Jacoby. Thank you so much for having me here.
You are celebrating 20 years of not only getting your real estate license, but becoming a member of the Chicago Association of Realtors. I did my homework. Why did you initially get into real estate?
Well, yes, 20 years. I can't even believe it. I got into real estate because we had a real estate transaction, my husband and I, and it didn't go as well. And I had been dabbling in the nonprofit world for a long time. I love people. I love making connections. And someone suggested to me that maybe real estate was a good career choice for me. And so I took advantage. And I took my classes with the Chicago Association of Realtors almost 20 years ago with the one and only Frank Williams, and now a friend and a mentor of mine.
What does real estate school entail? You talk about taking those classes. What does that look like?
Well, it looked a little bit different 20 years ago, you know, because I remember taking it and it was, you know, you had to become a real estate salesperson first and then a broker. Now you just become a real estate broker. And what that entails is checking out our website, signing up for one of our pre-licensing courses. And that is a 75-hour course that really covers law and the business of real estate in real life. And then you get to do the real work after that, because after the 75 hours, you get to study some more, take the state exam. And then after that, you get to become a realtor, right? You sign up with a managing broker, you sign up with a sponsoring broker in office, and then you can call yourself a realtor.
How does being connected to the Chicago Association of Realtors give students a leg up? What does that networking, that support look like? How does it make you a more successful realtor?
from really the beginning of my career, as I mentioned, I took the classes with the Chicago Association of Realtors, and that really opened my eyes to the possibility of finding mentors, finding other people that had the same, what I call ganas, right? The same want to become successful, to start really your own business. But we were all kind of going through our own differences in the markets because we have 77 amazing neighborhoods in Chicago. And so we were all dealing with similar things, but also very different things. And so that gave me an opportunity to really to connect to other members across the city and say, hey, I want to sell Lincoln Park. Can you give me a heads up over there? I live by Midway Airport. You want to sell on this side of town? Let me give you some insight of how it works. And so the reality is that this allows me to have a connection with, we have almost 17,000 members. And so that allows me to have this huge network of collaborators to really do the best work possible for our clients across the city.
17,000, which means you've had endless colleagues. I imagine so many mentors and mentees. Do you have a success story that stands out in your mind over these last couple of decades of a past student that comes to mind?
I mean, we have a lot of success stories throughout the years, right? One of the most recent ones that I just had a couple of days ago, a friend of mine, she was actually introduced by my aunt. And she said, Erica, I think I want to become a realtor. What's the next step? And I said, here's a link to our real estate school. And on top of that, we have a foundation. The foundation provides scholarships to cover the costs to these individuals that want to start a business and want to start a career in real estate. And so I had mentioned to her, please apply for the scholarship in conjunction with your classes. And she texted me a few days ago that she got the scholarship, which means the course is free for her. And then she gets the application for new member waived. And on top of that, she gets to attend our YPN breakfast, which are the coolest breakfasts in town in Chicago. And she gets to attend those, start building relationships with other realtors even before she becomes a realtor. So she can see the power of networking, the power that our association has, and that we truly are the voice of real estate in Chicago.
Erica, I appreciate you making time for us and being here. Again, check out realtorsrealestateschool.com to learn more. We'll have that link for you in our show notes as well. So you're just a click away. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, we can't get up out of here without some good news. I'm excited to be talking tomorrow morning at the Chicago Architecture Center with Creative Morning Chicago, but I'm also looking forward to African Festival for Arts in Washington Park this weekend, Lucha Libre at Unity Park on Saturday at noon, and you got Taste of Polonia in Jeff Park this weekend. Plenty of options to pick from, my friends. Make sure you visit our website, chicago.citycast.fm, and bookmark our events calendar, where you're not only going to find these events, but hella events across the city. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.